Hello, everyone. Welcome to AVPN's first South Asia Impact Capital Festival. I am Natasha Rinja, Product Manager, Capital Mobilization at AVPN. I am your MC for this session and very delighted to have you join us today. For those of you who do not know about AVPN, we are a network of funders and resource providers with over 600 members across 32 markets. Our mission is to move more capital towards impact in Asia by providing social investors like yourselves opportunities to connect with key stakeholders across various sectors and markets, to learn from one another and to find opportunities for action. We are also sharing highlights of our day live on Twitter, so don't forget to share your experience with us by using the hashtags AVPN South Asia 2021 and hashtag social impact. Throughout this month, the festival has been spotlighting best practices and solutions that AVPN members are delivering across India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. These sessions have and will address issues ranging from healthcare, livelihoods, climate action, and education, which are of particular urgency for the sub-region today. A few housekeeping announcements before moving to the program. To download any session resources, please click on the download icon in the agenda page beside the session title. Our partners have set up virtual booths with useful guides and resources. Please click on the Festival Partners tab to chat with the relevant partner representatives. To continue chatting with your speakers and fellow delegates in this session, please make full use of the messaging function or the event feed in the platform. Finally, please note that this session will be recorded and you'll be able to access the recordings after the festival. This week, the festival will focus on education. As we are slowly rebuilding from the pandemic, we are acutely aware of how the last year has affected learners all over the world. More than 1.6 billion children were affected by massive school closures across the globe, leaving more than a third of school-going children with no access to remote education. The school closures also affected steady educational gains that had been made in emerging economies over the last decade. Countries pivoted quickly to digital learning, but in doing so, increased the digital divide in learning between children who had the means and access to continue learning and those that did not, especially in emerging South Asian economies. For households that relied on daily wage incomes, the aggressive lockdowns meant that children were forced to assist their parents in their work, dismantling years of progress in preventing and eradicating child labor. The lockdowns also triggered other socioeconomic inequities, most importantly, in disproportionately affecting girls' education. UNESCO estimates that over 11 million girls might not return to school post the COVID-19 crisis, threatening all progress made towards gender equality over the years. Apart from learning alone, the school closures affected holistic development of children, curtailing their ability to have peer-to-peer exchanges, develop interpersonal skills, and affecting physical and motor development. As some countries have slowly started reopening schools, we must be mindful of the longer-term implications from effects of the pandemic to learning and skilling. This final week of the South Asia Impact Capital Festival, we invite you to explore various innovative ways for impact organizations and impact capital to address these challenges. To kick off our Education Week, I would like to invite Naina Sabharwal Batra, Chairperson and CEO, AVPN, to introduce our speaker for the session, Shabnam Sinha, Lead Education Specialist India at the World Bank. Naina, over to you, please.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you so much for joining us today, Shabnam. Shabnam doesn't need any introduction. She has been leading the education program of the World Bank Group here in India for a number of years. So Shabnam, I wanted to start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about the STARS program. Can you tell us what is the support that is being provided by the World Bank Group in this undertaking with the government?
So Naina, first of all, thank you very much for organizing this event. And as we all know that AVPN and you are stalwarts in this bridging of the public service providers along with the private sector providers. So we are very happy and thank you very much for putting this together. And yes, STARS is one of, perhaps I would like to say, we've been in the education sector for a very long time, but it's one of the most transformational programs, I would say, that we have started supporting. And it's incidental that today itself we've declared effectiveness of the project. And it's a $500 million project to the government of India. And for the first time, we are actually, leveraging the federal structure of India and looking at how best can we support the national government in being an overall kind of framework and an umbrella organization which empowers the states and strengthens the states to deepen the implementation of school reform. So the program is looking at, first of all, improved service delivery at the state level, but more so for improving accountability measures and for looking at, the national education policy, as you know, has been brought out by the government of India. So STARS is been declared as the vehicle for the national education policy. And therefore, through this, we are actually bringing about certain critical reforms in the education sector, like bringing early childhood education into the education fold, bringing school to work transition very critically in this sector. So these are certain important initiatives which I would like to mention to start the discussion off with, but I'm happy to go into the details of it.
So you mentioned the national education policy. So I wanted to go a little bit into that. So, I do understand, and from, what you've shared, that the STARS program is directly going to support the development of human capital of students in line with the goals that the national education policy have laid out. So can you tell us a little bit more in terms of how the program proposes to leverage the existing government schemes that support skilling? And also, how do you propose to work with donors and other organizations that are already designing and or executing skill building programs in the country?
See, as I mentioned earlier, our programs usually used to be funding to the national government, and then we sort of were hands off.
Yes.
Here we have, this program is depending a lot on the actual execution, the actual implementation, and therefore we are incentivizing results. So it's called a program for results operation. So our monies will only be disbursed if the results are achieved by the government of India as well as by the states. So the national education policy is there, but it needs to be made sure that this is implemented at the state level. And for that, if funds ride, certain results, then states are also incentivized to do that. So for the first time, we are creating something called state incentive grants. And these are pegging themselves onto the national education policy. So if you have done, early childhood education within your education fold, or there is effective convergence with the ICDS program, you get more funds. If you have created, training programs which are very effective, training, learning materials for the early childhood education, which is what is proposed in the national education policy, you get funds. The school to work transition, as you know, is very critical, and especially as the RMC mentioned, that in the context of COVID, there are a lot of students who are dropping out of schools at the secondary level or even at the pre-secondary level. Now, how best can you address these issues and provide them vocational education, pre-vocational education, and transit them to the field of work and to the labor market? So these are things which we are trying to do. And in this, we are partnering with, the whole initiative is going to be a one of partnership. So, the idea is that how can public service delivery happen through partnerships with the non-state actors? And that is a peg on which we are building this whole discourse. So, you may have read Land Pritchard. So he says that, how do you transit from form to function? So the form is there, the national education policy is there. Now, how do you trigger the functionality? And in order to do that, we are bringing this program. We are incentivizing states. One important thing to mention is that we are supporting 6 states. We are saying, let's make the transition happen, the innovations happen in these 6 states. So the 6 states are Himachal Pradesh, Kerala, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, and Rajasthan. So these were identified with the government for certain reasons through the governance index, which the government has brought about. But again, coming back to your question, this is a program which depends very, very strongly on partnerships and on collaboration with the non-state actor. And that is something which we are incentivizing through our state incentive grants.
No, thank you. That's really interesting, and I don't think we've looked at state incentive grants in previously, and I think this is a new step, and I think something that other funders, non-state actors, will look at with a lot of positivity, especially if you're looking at private sector funders and your whole incentivizing success, which I think is very interesting. So talking about partnerships and collaboration. I wanted to talk about your work in executing the multi-donor fund to actually look at how do we bring in new partners, new collaborations to address the skills gap that we've talked about, and I think that all of us are aware that exists. So what do you, in your opinion, what are the various aspects of the School to Work program that this multi-donor trust fund would support or enhance? And how do you think that ecosystem partnerships can actually help achieve better productivity, more income generation for the youth?
Well, thank you for talking about it, Naina. And I'm happy to share that this is the first public forum where we are actually launching the Multi-Donor Trust Fund. And it is perhaps, while the STARS program itself is a very exciting program, the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, which is linked with the STARS program, is perhaps one of the more exciting aspects of it. It is, trust funds are funds which are generated by the World Bank. And the donors provide those funds to the bank in trust. And the trust is because of our fiduciary systems, our social and environment safeguards, etc. And we provide those funds to grantees, which could be government, which could be semi-government autonomous organizations, or above all, it could be the private sector. Right. So the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, we have generated $10 million. And the first 2 million is actually right now going to the Central Board of Secondary Education. I mean, that's a discussion we are having with them for creating vocational schools and vocational centers across the country, which would be partnering with the sector skill councils and the non-state actors and employers. But there is also something which we are going to be launching and which we've launched yesterday, but I wanted to actually let the word out today, is a challenge fund, which is a challenge fund which is being launched by the World Bank, and it's called iStar. That is, I am a star. So every individual has that potential within them to become a star. So the fund is called iStar, and it is going to be supporting. We're starting it as a first pilot. It will be supporting school to work transition strategies. It could be pilots. It could be training programs. It could be, training of trainers, training of assessors, things which kind of consolidate and fulfill the requirements of the skilling and vocational industry, especially from the school sector. And up to $50,000, starting with perhaps $10,000, up to $15,000 would be available for entities which are selected through this open call for proposals. And we will have certain, identification measures, certain selection methodology and criteria. But it would bring in the non-state actors. And we are, once we've launched this now, this is a $10 million fund, but there are several funders who are wanting to join to look at early childhood education, provide support for learning assessment. So we will be further topping up these funds and asking and setting out more challenge funds like this.
No, that is exciting news indeed. And I think, we should definitely use this forum and others to encourage organizations that have new age and innovative solutions to actually partner with the bank and be part of this amazing initiative to achieve a better school to work transition. I think it's an amazing opportunity, I think, for new types of organizations to actually look at applying to be part of this consortium and this collaboration. So I think that should be welcome news for a number of people that have logged in and are listening to this discussion. Just talking a little bit more about the kinds of organizations that you would be hoping would be encouraged to apply for this iStar grant challenge. So what is, I mean, a couple of things that you think organizations should bring to the table, so that, you and I have talked a lot about it when, there are the usual suspects who seem to always apply. And, I really like your vision. Let's open this up, bigger, broader, so that there is a new type of organization that actually thinks that they can come to the fore. So what kinds of things should people be thinking of when they are applying for this challenge grant?
See, I agree with you that there are some usual suspects which any challenge fund opens up, which are the organizations which will apply. But here what we are wanting, it's a kind of a truly a venture fund. It's kind of a risk funding. And we are looking at organizations which may be new, which may not have, a lot of, what should I say, entry level evidence of having worked with governments. But if they are ready to come online with us, come on to support us in this. But the solutions have to be very innovative. And we will also look at solutions which are more technology oriented, which are, for example, the gig economy and the other issues which are disrupting labor markets today. How do you prepare the school going children or the kids who have dropped out from school to move into the labor market? For example, we have just funded a young group which is looking at creating a social registry, a migrants registry, a skills registry, because there are a lot of migration which is happening from the urban centers to the rural centers. Now, you do not know where these people are going, though this is not related to the MDTF. It's actually related to the MDTF. We are funding it through the MDTF.
Right.
And, the skills registry is actually tracking the people who are going, looking at what are the skills available. And we are focusing a lot on recognition of prior learning.
Right.
So, you already have, if you're a carpenter, you do not have a formal certification, but you know how to make beds and tables and stuff.
Right.
So we recognize this previous, entry level readiness that you have, give you a certification and connect you to the labor market. So, these kinds of, so this was a very interesting, and this is a completely analytical work because data is again very important. So if there is somebody who can give us very, very useful data, which is very relevant to today's, the problems that are facing in present times, we would be happy to look at that. But technology is going to be the overriding factor here, so that, you can even look at providing, training on technology to move into the labor market for the students themselves. So the idea, so the entities could be, non-governmental agencies, it could be private sector, new sort of startups, etc. But the only thing which we want is, we will either, they are already connected to the governments, or we will connect them to the governments, so that, what is happening in the private sector or what has been envisaged filters into the government sector. So the public and private, combination is optimal. That is our focus here.
Right. No, absolutely. And, just a follow-up question on that. Is it important that, you mentioned 6 states that are, that you are going to be working in. So when these organizations are thinking of applying, does it matter if they can, be working in one state, or is it that, if they've got experience of working in a particular number of states, or it doesn't matter, they can, help scale their efforts in this partnership with you? Is that what you're foreseeing?
Yeah, that's absolutely possible. But as I said, even if they have not worked with the government, but they have a very, very useful proposition, which can work with the government and turn the scales, we are happy to connect them with the government. And ideally, we would want them to go to these 6 states.
Right.
Because these are the ones that are being supported by us. But in case they wish to go to another state, which is outside of the format of this state, we're ready to look at it, because there is a knowledge sharing component within STARS, where whatever one state has done will be shared with another state. So in case they are working in a non-STARS state, we're happy to look at the initiative and take it to another state, because that cross learning and knowledge sharing, what we call the Lighthouse India initiative of the World Bank, is
Yes.
definitely very much on, and we're okay to support that. The only thing is that there has to be evidence of working with the government,
Mhm.
or the readiness to work with the government, and we are going to be the facilitators in that we give that commitment.
No, and I think that is a huge value that you're bringing to the table, because traditionally a lot of private sector organizations, and especially those that are working on newer models, working with technology, are always hesitant about how do they work with government, especially if they haven't had that experience. And I think you bringing that in very openly and offering to do that facilitation, I think will go a very long way. I wanted to ask you a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned briefly in the beginning that this is a very unique model where you are looking at both the federal structure as well as the states. Can you just explain a little bit more so that our listeners can understand how you see this, and why did you choose, which is very different, because we have a lot of members who work on specific states, work with specific state governments, but few that actually do this federal structure. So I'd love to understand from you a little bit more the thinking behind it.
Well, the World Bank India Country Partnership Framework, which is an agreement between us and the government of India with the Ministry of Finance, is focused this particular time period, which is between 2018 to 2022, focus on a lot on triggering the federal structure of India. Therefore, we realized in all our programs that a lot of central support does not work, because education especially is a concurrent subject.
Right.
So the implementation happens at the state level. So this time we decided that, okay, and in fact, STARS is perhaps our star project, in the sense that this whole federal structure discourse has been brought about, has been encapsulated in this program. So at the national level, what we are requesting the government of India is that you be the overall, the overall umbrella organization, which creates the framework, which creates the overall structure, but the implementation is going to happen at the state level. So the funds are going to go to the state level. So out of these 500 million, I think about 350 million is going to go to the state governments. So if you count it in Indian rupees, it's a lot of money.
Right.
And the state governments have been authorized that, look, these are the results. These are the 5 results that we are looking at: early childhood education, improved learning outcomes, teacher training, school governance and reform. That's very critical, where we actually worked very closely with another private sector organization, the Kaivalya Foundation, and set up some structures in Madhya Pradesh, in Maharashtra. And the last one is the school to work transition. Now, if you look at our, the latest World Development Report of the World Bank, not the latest, actually, it was 2019, the World of Work, which talks about the world of work. It talks very clearly that, the entire human capital accumulation storyline is very important for transiting an individual into the labor market, to make them person productive. So therefore, we are looking at the whole continuum here. Early childhood education has always been somehow very deficient in the education sector, because it's been part of the social welfare department. So for the first time, the states are actually, there is money on the table. If you're going to do this work properly, here is the money. So, the moment you incentivize certain things with certain funds, and the funds could be used by the states to do whatever they wish to, that's untied funds.
I see.
The only thing we are looking at is the results. Give me the result that we want. Because, and here we are looking at the whole foundational learning piece. So, at class 3 level, how is your result looking at the national achievement survey? In vocational education, how many kids have you brought into the vocational stream, and what sort of learning assessment systems, what sort of vocational trainers have you created, how many assessors? Because one of the shortcomings in this area is effective assessors. So you may have done vocational training, but there's nobody to frankly assess them. If you're doing solar paneling, if you're doing something which is a little alternate, there isn't enough assessment systems available. So all these things will be funded. And what we have funded is, we are funding right now a lot of the sector skill councils. For example, we are funding the logistics sector skill council, and they are working in 2 star states to train the kids on, and with the coming up with the Amazons and the Flipkarts, there needs to be a workflow of trained individuals who could go into warehousing, who could go into bookkeeping, who could go into courier services. So we are creating that, and these are aspirational skills.
Right.
These are not skills which like for example, the construction sector has got huge amount of vacancies, but you can't. But somehow kids do not wish to go into becoming masons or things. But
Um,
these are kind of whiter collar jobs. We are also working with the banking, insurance, and BFSI, banking, financial sector, and insurance, sector skill council.
yeah.
And they are going to be training, and this is again something very aspirational for young kids. They are training the kids on the students
Mhm.
on banking, on microfinance, on insurance related skills, and then going to be transiting them into the labor market. So these are the kinds of initiatives which could further be taken forward, and these are things which are different, which we've never done in education before. This is what we would encourage further on.
No, that's really actually fascinating, because I think the cross pollination of working with the sector councils and sort of giving that incentive to state governments to try and see how they implement this in their own state schools, I think is a combination that I think would be quite amazing. I'm going to ask you something quite personal. You have been, closely associated with the education sector for a number of years. We all talk about sort of the mayhem that COVID has unleashed on education. What have you seen? I mean, over this sort of long 1 year that we have all passed, how do you feel? What has been the most severely impacted, and where should private sector funders be focusing on, and how should they be sort of really utilizing their dollars in the most effective manner? What would you suggest?
See, on a personal note, since you're asking, we closed. I mean, the World Bank is obviously very concerned about its people. So our offices are closed.
Hmm.
And you will not deliver, imagine, we've delivered the $500 million of STARS project. We
Right.
are just about to deliver another $500 million for Gujarat. So work doesn't stop and life doesn't stop. So I want to start with that positive, message
Mhm.
that COVID is there, and some form of COVID is always going to remain there.
True.
So schools are going to be, or any organization, any office, a school, a training center, will have to be innovative, will have to think on its feet, and will have to find innovative solutions to overcome this. So what is very important is systemic resilience. Is your system ready to be able to take on COVID or any other alternate disaster that may happen? It could be an earthquake, it could be a flood, it could be a SARS, it could be the bird flu, or it could be anything which would affect school closures, would be impacted. In India itself, about 250 million children, students have been impacted. So if you look at India numbers, they are mind-boggling. And if
Right.
you look at it globally, then it's phenomenal.
Yep.
But the point is that again, people are coming out of it, or rather going back to it. In India, COVID has started all over again. So this is a way of life. So the support that the private sector could provide is within this given situation. How can you look at providing innovative solutions for
Mhm.
teachers to be connected to the students? Can home learning be possible? Can blended learning be provided? Can you provide technology solutions? Now, for example, if there is a big company like, I don't know, who provide technology solutions, can they provide, bandwidth to schools, certain number of schools? And I'm talking about hard infrastructure here,
Right.
which is going to be supported through stars anyway. But even if you do it in a small geography, or you could provide technology, software, hardware, infrastructure, whatever, that's also very much doable. And that would be something which is a real contribution to the government sector. The government is doing its best. If you look at a state like Gujarat, like 95% of schools are connected through electricity. But
Right.
that's not there in, say, a Bihar or a Jharkhand. But even there, the children are suffering. So how is it that the private sector can provide solutions to these deprived areas? So we have bucketed the states into learning states and lighthouse states. The Gujarat is a lighthouse state. Rajasthan, interestingly, has become a lighthouse state because it has done some very interesting work in education. But there are certain states, like a Maharashtra, for example, is right now struggling very much with COVID. So that's one of the states that could learn through innovations and through on-the-feet thinking that has happened in other places. So our multi-donor trust fund is going to be demand-driven, competitive, open, sort of transparent selection processes. And there will be an advisory group which will advise us to look at, how best to select the entities that are going to be supported. So COVID is certainly something which we are going to support through the multi-donor trust fund. But ideally, since this is focused on school to work transition, that's what we are looking at in this particular pot of money. But the moment we generate another pot of money, I think perhaps another 10 million, which will come maybe by next year, then we will look at perhaps early childhood education or teacher training, depends on what the donor wants.
To do. Right, right. So I want to ask you, I mean, we talked about COVID and the challenge. And so with the STARS program, with this particular pool of money from the multi-donor trust fund, what do you think, what do you hope to achieve? I mean, if you could sit down and really sort of, make a wish, 5 years from now, what do you hope that the STARS program is actually going to achieve for skilling, for youth employment in India? Where do you see it going?
See, what's 10 million? 10 million of the multi-donor trust fund is peanuts.
Yes.
I mean, we are putting 500 million and we would even top it up with the government. But what my wish is over the next 5 years to 6 years is the impact and the impetus that we wish to generate at the state level. And more than the state level, at the district and sub-district levels should be generated. Like COVID has come and it is going to stay. There are other problems which happen. There are reasons why children drop out. There are reasons why migrations happen. Now, how can the schools perform in a manner through, the hand-holding support of the district government, of the block government, of the block entity, the cluster resource centers? How can they be made so strong that the systemic support that is being provided at the decentralized micro level is so strong that the center doesn't have to step in, the state can relax, but it is a stakeholder owned education system, and a system which cannot be just, it is an interdependent system. So public service delivery cannot just be delivered by the public system. It has to have a partnership with the agencies which have the capacity to better manage, to better deliver, to have access to more technology. So the wedding between the public sector and the private sector, again, my main thing is that it has to strengthen the public sector. We are not interested in just strengthening the private sector. The idea is to strengthen the public sector, but use the effective management capacities of the private sector to strengthen the public sector. So that's the whole idea.
No, thank you, Shabnam. I think that is, something that is key. 70% of our members actually support education, and, they are coming from the private sector. And I think one of the things that you actually said today is it holds true. It doesn't matter which country you're talking about or which part of the world. You can't do it by just strengthening private systems. You need to strengthen the public sector, and you need to work with the government to really get to scale. I think what else really resonated really loudly with me was that, how do you marry the sort of infrastructure, the systems that the public sector brings or the government brings to the table with the effective management styles, the innovation, the kind of speed of decision making that the private sector can bring.
That's right.
And, I really would like to congratulate you on the work that you've done to be the bridge between the public and the private sectors as the World Bank Group, in terms of really helping straddle these two different, very different beasts, if you want to call them that. I think also what I thought was really remarkable is that, your hope that eventually it's stakeholder owned. Eventually it goes down to the district level who are actually taking ownership for these programs. And I think unless and until that happens, we're not going to see widespread adoption, and we're not really going to see it be as effective. I also would like to congratulate you on, this incentive driven model, because I don't think we've seen that very much before, and especially incentive driven that gives give state untied funds, which, anyone will tell you are worth their weight in gold. So, this program to me sounds very, very different, very amazing, and, very glad that AVPN can partner with you to sort of help bring different organizations both to apply for the grant challenge, but hopefully also to encourage our members who are looking for investing in education in India to look at the Multi-Donor Trust Fund as a vehicle to come in and work closely with you and your team to see how we can drive education objectives. So thank you so much, Shabnam, for this really interesting discussion. And I'm going to hand it back over to Natasha.
Thank you. Thanks, Naina.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Naina and Shabnam, for that very riveting conversation. And congratulations on the launch of the iStar Challenge grant. We look forward to seeing all of the innovative solutions that comes in. What a great way to start our education week. We have now come to the end of this fireside chat. This session is made possible with the kind support of our festival partners, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Sesame Workshop India, the Rockefeller Foundation, #COVID Action Collab, VNV Advisory Services, the British Asian Trust, WPP India, CSR Foundation, Catalyst Management Services, and Sattva. To continue chatting with your speakers and fellow delegates in this session, please make full use of the messaging and the meeting function of our festival platform. Do share your highlights of this session on social media, and remember to tag us using the hashtag AVPN South Asia 2021 and hashtag social impact. Up next, the session on integrating impact measurement within CSR, which will be starting at 4:35 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of the festival.